Well, while you're biting into that, you know what everybody else can bite into? Everybody else can bite into We've Got Issues. That's right. Welcome to another episode of We've Got Issues. As always, I am your host, Evan. And joining me is the magnificent stylings of the Fizza.
Yo.
And we've got a special double Oreo stuffed episode for you tonight with 15 news items in the bullpen. Starting with, so Fizza, did you by any chance watch the Emmys?
I did not. You?
No. I mean, I usually don't, but which means we lose
Lose what?
the Emmys, life, styling, whatever you want. We're just two big losers. But you want to know who? But what am I? But you want to know who? But you want to know who won the Emmys by a lot.
Who won the Emmys by a lot? Schitt's Creek?
Great show. How much did Schitt's Creek win?
They got outstanding lead actor in a comedy series, outstanding lead actress. So Yuki and Catherine O'Hara both got wins. His son, who plays his son,
Yeah.
won for best supporting. And the actress who played his daughter won the best supporting actress. I mean, they really.
Oh, so they won a lot.
Yeah.
Well, good for them, going out on top. Yeah, it was a very funny show. They deserve it. But another deserving show who won 11 Emmys was Watchmen.
Oh yeah.
They won for Best Limited Series. The lead star, Regina King, won for Best Actress in a Limited Series. And I'm going to butcher this, and I apologize in advance. Abdul Martin, too, won an award for Best Supporting Actor in a Drama. And you were telling me that wasn't the guy who played the big blue dude.
But
Is that correct?
He was also the guy who played her husband.
Ah, okay, so he
You
was.
probably cut that out because we just gave away the whole ending.
Um.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so did you watch Watchmen? What did you think of the show?
I really liked it. You were saying before about how there was a lot of people who were hesitant, yourself maybe being one of them, because of them doing something else with Watchmen.
Right.
And
It's like, why? Well, we don't need more Watchmen stuff. We don't need to know what happens in the future of the Watchmen.
Exactly. And I myself I stayed away from all kind of information about, I try to do like a knowledge as best as possible. But I'll follow people. Like I knew David Didio was doing the show itself. And
Yeah.
I've been a fan of his, except when I hate him, like I do with Grant Morrison, how it is. And I was interested in seeing the show mostly because of that. But I have often been interested in reimagining stories. I'm a big fan of, I have been since I was young, Japanese animation,
Okay.
which often will tell a story again and again in different forms. There'll be a movie version of a TV series version of a original animated video or miniseries version. There's the same idea done again and again. So
Yeah.
I've always been up for something new. That being said, I heard a lot of negative things about people before the show came up based on the commercials and the advertisement there was. But it was really just a whim. My friend and I did while I was on vacation in New York. sat down and watched it, and in no time we had finished the show. We loved it. We spent half the time trying to figure out if it was a sequel to the book or the movie or something else entirely. It was such a fun and interesting story, and I think what I really loved about it, when I say a fun and interesting story, I don't mean like it's going to be rainbows and
Everything is all cheerful and
um,
smiling. Yeah.
it's Shiro without the happiness. Uh, what I liked about it, what I found interesting is I felt it did a good job of capturing the essence of the original Watchmen comic book series. Now, when I was young, I was mentored by an older comic nerd at my comic shop, and they said these are the books to read, and eventually get to them. And when I got to Watchmen, I was blown away. First read that book, I thought it was both biting social satire, even of the time I read it, which was much
Later than
after.
when it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
And I understood it. I grasped it. I loved it. I loved, like, if anyone out there hasn't read the comic book, you should be aware that it was originally published in issue form, and at the end of each issue, all 12 issues, there are like 3 or 4 pages of more information, more texture to the universe. One has the doctor's report
Yeah.
on Rorschach. One has excerpts from one of the characters in the book's autobiography. I mean, each one has this more information that like brings you into this world and paints this picture. And I thought the movie had some successes in translating the story, but even the one where they tapped in the animated. Have you seen this? Where
The
they
no, but the pirate story that kind of ran parallel in the comics. They
Yeah, there's
yeah.
a second story about pirates that they animated and released separately from the movie, but in the context of the story, it's told at the same time.
Right.
So they made a version on DVD where they put it back into the chronology of the movie, and
Oh.
even that was it was better, but even that wasn't, I feel, as good a job as this did with those same ideas, like
Yeah.
of taking another story and like running it through this other story and it connecting in this way that was so there's it's like 100% these guys got from my point of view. And Regina King, loved her since I was a kid and I was watching her on 227 as Brenda. Amazing. So happy to see her still kicking butt. It was great, great show. I enjoyed every episode. I found each was interesting. And I have to say, I was unfortunately one of those people Googling um, the Black Wall Street Massacre, and
Same.
I don't,
Same. I yeah.
the only defense I have is that they never taught it to me, and I never went out and looked for it because I was, I want to say, blissfully ignorant, and now I am horrified at
Yeah.
the complicity of like our government and people in our society doing terrible things. Um, and I think this story was so perfectly, like, also placed at the time. Like it
Right.
was the perfect time and place for the Watchmen. The I'm sorry, this TV show.
Because
Um,
like
it's so prescient. It's so
yeah.
like of now. Everything that's happening in there in this parallel world. As we were talking about parallel worlds too, like the idea of this Elseworld, this other universe. I thought that was great too. I thought I spent at least 4 episodes trying to figure out who President Redford was. I was halfway convinced that he was Robert Redford after like the first episode, which I
Yeah.
was like, no, 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 like it can't be Robert Redford. It's got to be some other Redford. And then when I was confirmed, I was like, oh my god, that's fantastic.
Well,
Um,
I mean, that's
it's
to me,
very
that's
interesting.
like what is so important about Watchmen, right? I mean, even with the comics, is yes, there are super heroics and creatures from space, not to give anything away in some versions, not in others. But at the end of the day, it's like a political critique of the time in which it was written, and yet also somehow kind of
That's why I think,
timeless in that it could critique politics in any time almost, I feel like.
and that's why I think it, the movie I think wasn't as good as it could have been
Agreed.
because of what because of this is what it should have been. Like this TV series, this idea of reimagining it for today. And again, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to say like, "You're crazy. The original is Bible." And we spoke a little while ago about how, um, as long as you've got the heart of the story, the meat
The
of it
soul,
in
yeah.
there. X-Men Evolution, Spectacular Spider-Man, both are such good shows. Vastly different evolution than the X-Men, but so much the same with Spider-Man, and yet they both have the heart of the
Right.
original stories. They
The
both have
essence of,
the essence
yeah.
of those stories. So despite how one is vastly different, where some characters are younger and older in school, another story where it's almost exactly like not perfect. We all loved Gwen, um, and it was cute to see her in high school with Peter. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I mean, I. Look, like I said, I, when I heard that not only were we going to get another story set in the future of the Watchmen, but that it was also going to be a TV show and not comic books, and after the movie and everything, I didn't know that much going into it, but I was like, yeah, why? Do we need this? The
I
comics
think
were pretty self-contained. I mean, you spoke before of something having like a pretty definitive ending. To me, the comics had what more was there to say? But I was blown away once I started watching the series. I think for two reasons. First off, because like you mentioned, it was it captured that sort of political heart and soul that the comics had so well, and at this same time, it wasn't the future of the Watchmen comics. It wasn't the future of all the characters and like what happened to Night Owl or Dury retires or like whatever. I mean, really, they had like three characters from the original graphic series, and the rest of it was all kind of a brand new, self contained, exquisitely explored and told series that kind of that explored the important politics of today the same way the comic series originally explored the important politics of the time in which that was coming out. And that's
right.
why I enjoyed it so much. And I
I
mean,
you
to
know
me, it deserves all the Emmys.
I was just thinking about this as you were talking is one of the things I think makes it even more powerful in my eyes is how cyclical the problems seem to be. Like the problems of the book or the movie, depending on how you saw this being a sequel to, or maybe not involved at all. Whatever story was the proto story, that's still an aspect of this story. Things haven't changed. They're just going through the same cycle
Right.
of like we're still having a problem in this country with race, even though it's been 100 years since there's been slaves, and it's because we're
Well,
not
we
always
don't.
talking about it
Yeah.
enough and like educating people enough. We were talking about just now. I wasn't educated on, or I didn't look to
Right.
find out about this massacre, and it's this
Same. I
educational
mean, when.
conversation
Yeah.
that this TV series has given us. Maybe let us talk about it. Prescient show.
It had me Google what that even was. Like when I was going to school, they didn't teach that, and so I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing until the show, and then when I found out, wait, that actually happened, like led me to Google it, and it so
Remember,
unimaginably horrific.
remember the Trail of Tears wasn't more than a page or two in my high school history book, and it's just how don't we gloss over these
Yeah.
facts and you know don't bring that out, and it's crazy. Hopefully, these everything going on is making people talk more about race. I was seeing someone who was saying that they really liked a show because it had um, a recent like talk show because it had two people who had a lot to say about race, both black people, but both on like with different viewpoints, and I was like, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. Usually, the person of color is the only person of color on the panel, but now we have two people of color talking about the issue of color in America, and I was like, fantastic. I mean, the moderator was still white,
But you got to give them props for even doing that, and where we are in terms of racial issues and political issues, economic issues. They're all such serious, heavy stuff that need to be examined and need to be discussed and need to be talked about. That I almost find it now. How do we go from that to the next news story? How do we go from that to like, okay, news story number 2. Apparently, Diamond Comics Distributors has been having printing issues. Like, it almost pales in comparison, right?
and great art should pale in comparisons, right? It's because art like that helps us have this conversation. It helps like continue it beyond
Yeah.
our 15 minutes here, and hopefully more people will in the comments below and share their feelings about Watchmen. Maybe someone out there didn't like it. Maybe someone thinks it's not helpful to continue to talk about this. Maybe someone wants to talk about this in those comments. Do it. Please do. Share. We want to
So,
hear what you guys think.
absolutely, absolutely. That's what it's there for. And, I suppose the only way to move forward is to actually do it. And
Yeah, one more thing before we move forward. I want to say that For All Mankind was filmed at the Emmys. Bam. All right. And a lot of female actresses didn't get nominated who I think should have. And if you want, I will, at the end of this broadcast, post a list of who I think should have been nominated for their performances because some snubs. I don't know if they think these streaming services aren't good enough for them, but Emmy, step up.
well,
Anyway, continue, sir.
so I mean, we could just kind of mention the printing issues. If you want to talk about streaming services not being good enough, we could jump straight to the third news story on the docket today, which has to do with Amazon and The Boys.
The Boys. Are you a fan of The Boys?
So I have not read the comics. So I have no idea how accurate the show is to the comics, if at all. But I gotta say, I've been watching the show, and it's funny, and I've absolutely been loving it, and in a completely different way than Watchmen. It too kind of has a very political, very different subject matter, but also a very political stance on kind of where we are currently as a nation, with kind of over exemplifying, overblowing, turning human beings into gods when really at the end of the day they're just human beings like the rest of us. I absolutely love The Boys, and have you watched it?
I have not. Is the guy who wrote the comics about the show?
No. As far as I can tell, not at all.
Yeah. Because he also created the comic that became the Preacher series,
Right.
which I think we both watched a little bit of.
Yeah, I watched some of it here and there.
Okay. I think that writer, the reason I never read that comic or watched the show yet, is because I'm not a fan of the extremes he sometimes goes to in his graphic storytelling. I feel like he's sort of sometimes. Preacher is fantastic. I think there's a lot of messages in some of this person's work.
Yeah.
But I felt that the book, because I did read the first issue of The Boys, I felt the book was leaning too much into the handicap of just like ultra violence and for violence sake, not so much for the social commentary, which you seem to think is in the show.
Who was the writer of the both? I want to say Grant Morrison, but that's not right. No, that wasn't Grant Morrison.
Garth Ennis.
Gar. Close. But drastically different in styles. Yes, Garth Ennis. Yeah. Well, I mean, like you were saying, the kind of over the top, square, blood splatter is kind of his style, and the show is not that.
Yeah, because that's the thing that turns me off sometimes.
That turns
stories.
me off of a lot of his work as well, just to be clear, which is why I never read the comics.
I really liked Preacher, but there was so much more to that than the ultra violence that was portrayed in it. And a lot of the ultra violence was obviously portrayed in that as hero. And I think that's what he does a lot, though. So
yes.
It also feels like it felt like when I read Boys, it felt derivative of Preacher for my.
So I mean, I won't lie. The Boys has its moments where it can be ultra violent, but I feel like unlike a lot of Garth Ennis's work, and I know he has a lot of fans. I'm personally not one of them. I'll be upfront and state that now. The show has moments of violence and bloodshed. It's an R-rated superhero show. How could it not? But I feel like it also has a lot of other things. And at the end of the day, again, to me, it's more of a satirical political statement on kind of the pedestal on which we place athletes and actors and our so-called A-list people who cover in magazines and whatever and almost make seem close to godhood and unfathomable. And to me, that's what the show is kind of tackles, and it's a lot of fun.
I'll give it a shot, but if they cancel it, like Netflix did to.
It's doing so amazingly well, and the numbers are through the roof. I mean, I wouldn't be concerned at all with that. In fact, if anything, the news item on the docket having to do with The Boys is that if anything is doing so well, it's getting a spin-off series, which is going to be set. It's so far untitled, and only has a premiere date of late 2021, but apparently it's going to be set in a college in this world of superpowered beings. I don't know how I feel about that, but we're getting it.
If we do, I don't know. I feel like until it's out, I don't believe it's coming. But
Although Amazon
like
seems
I
to be
said,
all in, but yeah.
but like I said, if they cancel it, like Netflix did you, I'm not okay with it. I'm gonna come for you, man. I'm coming for you because I'm so invested in that show, and it got canceled so quickly. Like snap your fingers. Another show with potential superhero action. For those out there who want like to like be crushed after watching such a great show, watch this show. I'm not okay with it. For those superheroes finding their
Yeah.
power, and they'll never get.
Yeah, I was so, especially since it got an immediate season 2 pickup, only for it later to be canceled. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another show that I was a big fan of that I was kind of crushed by, was the sudden turnaround and cancellation of I am not okay with I'm not okay with this, or I am not okay. I forget which one, but either
You
way,
did this.
yeah.
Anyway, what's the next item?
So
That, stuff.
so speaking of teens with super heroic capabilities, so
Got Roswell news?
no, although that would be interesting. I not from Roswell. Actually, he hails from Queens. Um, so in the continuing partnership, which I've yet to really understand the economics of, but as I'm sure you know, Marvel and IDW, which are two very different companies owned by different parent companies, have been kind of having this deal for a while now where IDW has been putting out younger aged, have been putting out Marvel comic books targeted at a slightly younger demographic.
Hey, what are some of the titles?
Um, well, you can Google for some of the past ones, but the ones that are coming towards you now is a whole new slate of titles starting in December featuring Spider-Man, called Marvel Action Origins. And these are going to be one-shot stories focusing on retelling, as you can probably tell, the origin stories of some of Marvel's more popular characters, but targeted at a much younger demographic, and judging by the artwork that's been released so far, kind of taking on a more Saturday morning cartoon looking aesthetic.
Like, was that imprint that you said Marvel Age? Or was that the kids?
Yeah,
Was that
yeah. So the first one is going to,
Marvel Adventures, too, right?
yes, Marvel Adventures. That's the one, and yeah, Marvel Adventures. And the first one is going to feature, again, the kid from Queens himself, Peter Parker, and that's going to be starting in December. And I only added that because, again, Marvel and IDW are continuing the partnership, and I don't get it, but hey, good for the both of them.
I noticed that it started sometime in 2018, I guess, this partnership.
I want to say like 17, but yeah, it could be 18, around then.
Oh, and so the first books were Avengers, Black Panther, and Spider-Man.
Yes,
And I believe
yes.
Miles Morales, Spider-Man in that.
But again, drawn much more like
Figure
the
of Six as well.
cartoon series and kind of targeted at a younger demographic. But yeah, exactly.
The Marvel Rising crowd.
Yeah, yes.
I tried so hard with Marvel, guys, and let me tell you, I watched 4 movies before I gave up on that.
I only watched one. It was decent,
If it,
I guess.
if it
I
was
don't
their
know.
attempt to do Young Justice, they did, it was unjust, but they did. It was terrible. It
What
wasn't
they
even,
did
it
was
wasn't even,
unjust to Young Justice.
it wasn't even Teen Titans. It's just,
But was it
I
better
don't know
than?
why
But was it better than Teen Titans Go? That's a real question.
to say. I'm not a fan of Teen Titans Go, but I appreciate what it's there for. What I don't, I mean, the thing, have you seen the Go version of Thundercats?
No, I stayed away with that like the plague. I don't like this whole kind of Go revolution that seems to be going around
I,
now,
I'm still a
spreading
fan.
like a fungus.
I'm still a fan of the Thundercats reboot from like 2010.
Right, same.
That was fantastic. Um, it was so like Avatar: The Last Airbender, except with flying out. It was awesome. Um, but yeah, no, I feel you. This Marvel seems to want to produce animated content for little kids, and DC wants to produce animated content for extreme adults. And neither of them are hitting the demographic which should be all ages. Because all ages like cartoons and comics, and let me tell you, to this day, the Batman, the animated series we watched when we were kids,
Mm,
um, it's still as sophisticated for adults as it is for children, as it is like good for
enjoyable
children.
for
Enjoyable for
yeah,
children. Yeah, thank you.
and that's what I'm
Like
here for.
I mean, today, like
Yeah,
20 years.
and also just to be clear, when you're talking about ultra-violent DC cartoons aimed at adults, I imagine you're speaking more towards um, the direct to VOD movies, and less say like
I feel
again
like
Young Justice.
I feel like well, Young Justice is for adults too. I mean, I see teenagers at and I see kids lower than that are not going to be so interested in Young Justice. They're going to be freaked out, also disturbed by some of the episodes in the third season if the parents let them watch that. But yeah, the only show I think TC has that's for kids is the Go show. Right? Teen Titans Go.
Well,
That's the
for
only.
kids, yeah.
I
I
think there
mean,
might be. I think there might be a direct to DVD or streaming service, Superhero Girls or something. I remember seeing
yeah, yeah. I don't know too
Wonder
much.
Woman,
Yeah, yeah,
but I
yeah.
heard it was not good. Um, but like aside from those two outings, DC even the new Superman movie, which I think I've already mentioned, I really liked.
Yeah.
The Man of Tomorrow. It's not the greatest superhero movie. That's going to be Wonder Woman 2009 animated, um, but it is really good. I think it's the Man of Steel I would have been okay with, but in that you literally see people burned to death. That is not the kill thing.
Well, see, so getting back to and how Marvel's animated projects are aimed more at very young kids. I heard a theory about that a while back that just
Please check.
made complete sense to me, and I'm like, that has to be correct. That has to be the reason, because it makes so much sense. And this is completely unsubstantiated. It's just a theory. But the theory goes is that Marvel in the entertainment division, so really Disney, has kind of a two-pronged thing going on, which is they get the young kids addicted to superheroes, right? With the cartoons, with Avengers, with Spider-Man, and with all of those. And then, so you get the kids, and the kids kind of grow on that. And then the movies are where the more kind of, not gonna say like utter adult, but certainly the more is meant for people of every age. So like the cartoons are to get them in.
So Marvel is creating nothing for adults, really.
Hey, I mean, we've had this conversation before. I'm a huge fan of the MCU. I disagree with that. I know you're not. It's fair, but
Hey, don't start rumors. I don't dislike the MCU. I just find most of it is the same. It's a lot of the same over and over again, and it's fun to watch, but I feel the issue is, I mean, Marvel has done some great things, and
yeah.
even in cartoon form, I really liked the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon.
But this theory would explain, yeah. But this theory would explain why we're not getting mature stories the way we got in Earth's Mightiest Heroes or Spectacular or even Evolution, because those would be too mature for the audience level that this implies they are targeting.
The X-Men was also a fantastic, and like you were saying, mature, like more mature. I would say like between to older.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I mean, I was a teenager, a young teenager, but still a teen when X-Men TAS first came on, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. That was really what introduced me and got me into the whole Marvel mutantdom.
Did you ever watch the NPH Spider-Man?
You'll have to
the Neil Patrick Harris.
No. No, sadly, I somehow missed that one. I think I was in college
the
or
animation does not hold up,
slightly out.
Unfortunately, but the stories were relatively interesting. And it's kind of fun to see Patrick Harris be Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, perfect casting right there.
Hey.
You know what else might be perfect casting? I don't know. The next news item is that James Gunn's upcoming Suicide Squad movie, which is not to be confused with the Suicide Squad movie that came out a couple of years ago. That's his own thing. James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie, which has yet to come out, is getting a spin-off TV series coming to HBO Max, starring John Cena. James Gunn will pen all 8 episodes, so it will be, the first season will consist of 8 episodes, all of which will be written by James Gunn, and he will also direct several of the episodes, and it's going to be a Peacemaker origin series. Do you know about DC's Peacemaker? Because I sure as hell don't.
Yeah.
Is that a no?
No, I do not know the Peacemaker's origin.
If you know who Peacemaker is, please let us know in the comments. I'm more of a Marvel guy. I have no idea who Peacemaker is.
So this is the project James Gunn has signed on to. It's not going to be a movie now.
No, he's doing the movie.
Oh, he's doing a movie as well as a TV series.
Right, he was signed up for the movie. The movie is wrapping up. And then this series will be the next thing that he put out there, which has been picked up. And he swears that this series will not delay Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Because, of course, James Gunn's also the guy responsible for Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy movie franchise, which is also set to conclude with a 3rd movie yet to be released. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Speaking of Marvel movies, surprising no one, this is really quick, all of them have been delayed into late 2021, making this the first year without a Marvel movie since before the first Iron Man movie came out. Just wanted to put that out there. If you enjoy the MCU movies like I do, got a bit of a wait, but that's COVID for you. The, sorry, what?
I said that's COVID for you.
Yeah.
Or maybe I said that is
That.
for you.
Mm. Do you watch CW Supergirl?
He used to, but she jumped the proverbial shark.
So no, not anymore.
Not anymore. I do find the actress as plays Supergirl such great casting though.
Yeah.
I think she's just the perfect Supergirl.
So
what's the news about the show though?
Well, the news is apparently you're not the only one who stopped watching. Which is why this upcoming season 6, again, all of the Arrowverse shows as well have been pushed into spring 2021. That's when Supergirl season 6 will debut. It will consist of 20 episodes, which will be more episodes this season than any of the other Arrowverse shows get, but it will also be its last. Which doesn't really surprise me because I personally kind of saw the writing on the wall when the Superman series was picked up. Because, well, sure, a channel could have 2 different Superman-themed shows on it. Like, why?
But not from watching the show, like...
Right. People have been turned off by the show. People have been getting soured opinions on this show. And really, I love Supergirl. But Supergirl isn't one of the main 3 Trinity. Superman is. He's getting his own show.
I really think that I would prefer more Supergirl than any Superman. I'm
really?
not a Superman hater or anything. But I think that she's a much more interesting character than Clark. And I really, like I said, I really enjoyed, I think the actress Melissa Benoist.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe
I think
that's
she
how it's
does
pronounced.
a fantastic job as Supergirl. I actually wish that Supergirl would spin off into another Supergirl story. I kind of was wishing when they had the Dark and they had the Legion on there, that she would end up having gone to the future with them.
An Legion
and
series?
The next show we would watch would be, Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes, because
That would be amazing.
I would love that. I would love to see...
Although probably so expensive to shoot in a live-action format, but I would still be all for that.
Some futuristic rooms,
Everybody's flying around.
CGI on the
Yeah.
Still go to coffee shops and hang out even in the 30th century. Who cares? But yeah, I just think I would have liked that. I think that the problem I felt with Supergirl was that it didn't really evolve. Like, it just kind of continued to do more of that. And it was like a painting that's gone out of control. And what you really needed to do was to take her and send her somewhere else, give her a new challenge. And I think that if, she had gone
To the future. Are you still there? Did we lose you? Hello? I think we might have lost audio from the Fizza. Fizza? Hello, Fizza?
talking, and it totally threw off my audio.
No worries. It's a part of, again, it's a part of doing podcasts, conducting business in the time of COVID. Sometimes disconnects happen. But anyways, you were saying that you would have preferred a Supergirl and the Legion TV series.
If she had just taken off with Valor and the rest of them into the future, I would have been up for something new. But I don't know. I just and I know you like the Lex Luthor of this universe, but I was unimpressed with that story arc.
Well, again, we had talked about this, and I got a bit confused. Which Lex Luthor story arc in particular are you referring to? Because he's had two now.
Okay, well.
And while the first one was certainly not great, his last story arc I feel is much, much better.
I only watched, the last thing I saw of Supergirl was the grass brought me back so much.
Yes, I remember that. That was unfortunate.
That's when I stopped watching the show.
And it technically wasn't the grass, just to be clear, it was the UV rays stored in the grass.
You know, let me tell you my feelings as I watched that scene. I just want to do this real quick. I'm sorry. I have to.
Sorry.
I thought Alex had gone crazy. And I was sitting there going, oh my god.
This can't actually be happening.
No, I thought the actress was really like, oh wow, she's really giving it her all. She's lost her mind. And then the son actually gets dumped out of the grass.
Uh-huh.
And said, oh my god, this show has lost its mind.
So, I agree with you.
I gave up.
That was not a great season. I would blame no one for giving up after that. I will say,
the story, and then I was like, no.
I will say, again, I love the guy playing Lex Luthor now. To me, he is one of the best live-action Lex Luthors that I've seen in a while, right up there with Michael Rosenbaum. But speaking of variants, he kind of did his own take on Lex Luthor, even though it was amazing.
The kid who played Lex Luthor's nephew in
Yes,
Superman 3
yes.
has a job.
And he's to me, and this past season, season 5, I guess, was one of the best Lex Luthor redemption arcs, although he wasn't really redeemed, but he was redeemed in my eyes. And was certainly a lot better season, I felt, than, yes, that whole Red Sun Supergirl season, which had plenty of promise, but unfortunately, I personally felt like had subpar execution.
So you're saying this last season wasn't
Yes.
good either?
What?
You're saying this last season was not so good?
No, I'm saying this last season was great.
Okay.
And had one of the best Lex Luthor arcs in live action that I've, seen, at least in Smallville. But anyways, that shows.
We could talk for hours.
We could.
Smallville.
So I'm gonna have to force myself not to,
Exactly.
and just say that just like Supergirl got canceled by DC, Dan Didio got canceled by DC. Although, was he? Or did he quit? Or was it a bit of both? Unclear.
I want to ask you a little bit more about Supergirl.
I feel like we're good on Supergirl. Supergirl is a super gal.
But my question you never answered
Ah.
was, did you feel by watching the show that it was gearing up to be over?
No.
Okay. So you really liked last season and you didn't feel, you thought the writing
No.
was on the wall simply because the other show was coming out.
Yes.
Okay. Alright, that's the only thing I wanted to find out.
However, I am also not surprised by the news, considering that the show has been not even steadily, like speedily decreasing in ratings and viewership. You're not alone in feeling put off by the show, no longer watching it. A lot of people have. Also, not Michael Rosenbaum, Benoist, the actress who plays Kara slash Supergirl apparently just had a child, so I'm sure there's. So I'm not surprised that the show was ending, but no, watching the last season, I was not like, okay, this is it. I mean, regarding, and this is the last thing I'll say on Supergirl, at least for this episode. I can't promise for future episodes. And I kind of feel this way about most of the CW Arrowverse shows, is that some seasons are great and some seasons are not. That's kind of been my experience with all of those. There have been some great seasons of Arrow, and there have been some really not so great seasons of Arrow. Same with The Flash.
I think you're looking for a terrible. I think what you're trying to say is it goes to extreme.
Yeah.
It's really good, or it's just really, really not good.
Right.
Okay. All right.
But that also makes it hard to judge what the quality of the following, to me, hard to judge what the quality of the following season is going to be, knowing and realizing this. Because it could either be really good or it could be really bad. Who knows?
I feel you on that. I really liked Supergirl right from the beginning, and I don't know, that last season was just so, the last season I watched.
Yeah, the Red Sun. Yeah.
There were so many great.
I mean, that was one of the seasons that sucked. I'll be honest. I judge no one harshly by watching that season and being like, okay, that's it. And again, a lot of people apparently did. You are not alone in that.
And are you trying to say that you should have all those people watching this should give it another try? Is that what you're saying now? That we should jump back on for the last two seasons, or that last season and this season?
I will say that mileage varies according to individual taste and everything. However, having said that, if you were a fan of the show previous to that, certainly, especially now knowing that it's very limited, yeah, come back, check it out.
This will be its 7th season or 8th?
6. The upcoming season will be both its 6th as well as final.
How long has Flash been on?
God, longer than Supergirl, not as long as Arrow, because that was the second one.
Shows have been on 10 years, though, right?
Yeah, that feels about right.
So no one has beaten Smallville yet. It still holds the record.
Oh, Smallville. Yeah, Smallville was on for 10 years.
I'm just saying, like, that one of the new shows.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, you know, like you said, we could do our own Smallville podcast.
Smallville.
But Smallville.
No show that tried.
Well, and it was a trendsetter for a lot of things, and I personally attribute Smallville for the reason why not the only reason, but certainly a heavy reason why we exist in the comic book heavy TV landscape that we find ourselves now. It kind of paved the way for all of that and showed people it could be done and it could be successful. So, having said that, what wasn't so successful? Well, I'm open to debate. It's a bit harsh. Was Dan Didio's stint at DC. As everybody knows, they had a big, very public parting of ways earlier this summer, and everyone's been waiting with bated breath to find out what he's going to do next. And we finally have our answer. Dan Didio has permanently joined the faculty staff of the Kubert School. Are you familiar with the Kubert School? The Joe Kubert School.
I was a lad.
What?
I've said, of course, I've seen the ads for
The
it.
ads, yes, dating back to the
Original ads.
90s, yes. Uh, it, of course, is a private institution set up by Joe. Was that the dad? I always get the dad and the son's names mixed up. The dad,
Joe was one of the best Spider-Man artists.
absolutely. And he ended up, he's no longer with us, unfortunately, but he set up a school to teach the art of comic books, comic book art, comic book writing, publishing, all of that. Is privately funded, and it has put out some of the most top-notch artists and writers working in the field today. And Didio has just signed on. Uh, he will be a permanent member now of that school. His first class, which will be offered online, so yes, you can take it, um, is called From Concept to Sale, which will be covering exactly what it sounds like, from initial conception all the way up to finalizing, pitching, and selling your idea. And it will start actually very close in a week on October 1st. And you can find out more information on that class, on how to take it, by visiting the Joe Kubert School's website. I don't know. I personally, good for him.
Not a fan, so I would say nothing.
Okay. Um, I'll just quickly add that Dan Didio was a very polarizing person in charge of DC when he was working there. He had a lot of people seem to only attribute him for the negative things he did, for which there are many. It is a known fact he was not a big fan of prodigy superheroes. He was not a big fan of Nightwing, which is why that character has underwent so much trauma. But he also believed very strongly in a lot of things that I personally thought were good ideas, and that apparently we are now seeing, by the way, DC really pushing for now that he's no longer there. Things such as Didio continued to push for linear storylines in comics. Didio continued to push for the importance of both monthly as well as print comics as opposed to all digital. We are now seeing DC, of course, without Dan Didio, they're moving more towards graphic novel sort of storytelling, and a much bigger emphasis on digital marketplaces. Which is why it should come as absolutely no surprise, though a little bit of a surprise, to our next storyline, storyline. Like what I did there, Fizza?
I do.
This is all comic storyline, why not? So a lot of people, myself included, I've had a membership to the DC Universe app pretty much since it first became available. Of course, now with all of its original programming moving to HBO Max, the question for a while on a lot of people's mind, including mine, has been, what happens to this app? And it turns out that what's going to happen to this app is it's basically going to be turned into DC's version of the Marvel Unlimited app. Are you familiar with Marvel Unlimited?
Comics.
Yes. It's a huge online database just covering Marvel Comics. Are you a fan? Have you ever used it?
I have two comics on it.
Yeah,
the library.
I feel like that's what I feel like Marvel Unlimited predates Comixology, or at least predates Comixology's rise to prominence. However, I believe most people now use Comixology as well. Um,
Library also offers free comic downloads through apps like Hoopla, and you can use your library card to read some comics. I mean, some people like to keep them. That's what the digital comics can be good for. But I, I don't see
the appeal.
I don't see the value in keeping digital comics. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but
Well,
the one.
you're not crazy. I certainly think you lose something when you move from physical to digital. However, a lot of people also just simply do not have the room for all of their bins, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
where I, you know, I view digital as being helpful. Like, if you got a small room in an apartment that you're sharing with six other roommates, you probably aren't covering the entire place and all of your DC collection.
I mean, I guess it depends on why you're collecting comics. Like,
This is
are you
true.
collecting comics for the fun of looking for books that are hard to find and putting them all together and reading them, or are you collecting them just to put another, check in the box of I've got all of this and I've got all of that. Um,
Or are you just looking for an easy way to read that particular issue of Batman that you might have missed? That's always
right,
a
right.
thing too.
I mean, for me, the reason I like the library is that I'm not. I read the book. I'm done with it. I'm probably never going to read it again. And
And you can
it's
return
fun
it.
to do.
And just
Yeah.
to be clear, we don't know, they haven't stated. Like with Comixology has both. They have the option so that you can purchase a digital comic, which is then yours until, I don't know, the service goes away or nuclear Earth or whatever. Comixology also has an option that allows you to borrow, and you're able to borrow only a certain amount of titles at a time. You read it. When you're done reading it, if you want to borrow something else, just like in a library, you return the one that you just finished. DC has only stated that their Universe app is changing to DC Universe Infinite, um, in 2021, which will be a purely digital comic platform. They haven't specified in terms of are all the comics that are going to be buy to own? Are they going to be borrowable? What the system's going to be like? I just wanted to put that out there, just for our readers to keep things clear.
Do you know what Marvel does?
Um, it's been an awfully long time since I used that app. I believe that it was like a Netflix subscription where you paid once a month, and it was sort of a la carte. You could read whatever they had in the app. And sometimes they would shift or change. I imagine it will be something. Yeah, actually, thinking about it and thinking about how you currently pay for DC Universe, probably a similar thing, an a la carte type comic service just covering DC titles. Does that change your perspective at all, or
No, I still just like borrowing them.
yeah?
The only ones I really like to keep are the ones I look for.
Although that's a whole other question. If it's digital and you're paying once a month for a service, do you are they yours? Do you get to keep them? Do you, if you pay for Netflix, do you own the shows that are on there, or are you just buying them? But that's a topic for a whole other show.
Well, I make sure I have some movies of it, some shows, movies. I'm like,
Yeah. Speaking of digital Marvel, this is actually big news. Well, no, let's continue with DC for a minute and then we can circle back around. Um, Final two news items for today regarding DC Comics is first, at the time, and this was under Dan Didio's watch, a lot of money, it's unclear how much, but a lot of money was offered to Brian Michael Bendis in order to get him to leave Marvel for DC Comics to work on its two flagship Superman titles, Superman and Action Comics, for the foreseeable future. That was a while ago. The quality of those titles, much like Brian Michael Bendis's work on other titles, seems to be mixed. Some people love it and some people really hate it. But again, seems to be extremes.
They also give Bendis an imprint.
They did. The Wonder, yeah. Which he will be continuing with. But Bendis and the artist he's been working with on the Superman titles will be leaving those titles come December. How do you feel about that? Have you been staying away from reading Superman because of Brian Michael Bendis? And will you come back knowing that he's leaving? Fizza.
Me?
Yes.
Both
or the audience, everyone.
I asked them, are both the artist and the writer leaving?
Yes.
Here's it. I actually never really read Superman, but I got a recommendation to read Brian Michael Bendis' Up and Away or something.
Okay. Yeah, so that was the Walmart one, I think, which was actually got a lot of praise.
So I think I saw it on the library app on Hoopla. So I might borrow that. But I not like I'm more apt to read a Batman family story than I am to read a super story, unless it's about my Superboy.
And who's your supervillain?
Superboy.
Oh, Superboy, yes. Well, of course, that was part of the criticism. Well, that's a different Superboy. Now, Superman actually in the comics now has a son of his own, you know. And that was one of the things that Brian Michael Bendis did that a lot of people were unhappy with, was he changed the whole family dynamic that was going on there, sent Lois packing, and turned Superman's son into kind of a bratty teenager. And then sent him off into space with Jor-El.
Pretty stupid.
So, but I take it that this has no effect on you regarding reading Superman. So the other DC news story is, again, Dan Didio. Mark Waid. Everybody who's watching this should be familiar with Mark Waid. If not, Fizza, would you please give us a quick, who is Mark Waid?
Written some of the best Flash comics you're ever going to read. If you only read some Flash comics, read the ones that Mark Waid wrote. I'm just going to say that. If you're not down to read a bunch of Flash, just read Mark Waid. Although I will tell people who are familiar with the current status quo that they're all going to be mostly about Wally West. And Wally West is also going to be white and have red hair.
Yes.
But it's still going to be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Does have some, I'm sorry to interrupt, I'm sorry.
No, sure, go ahead.
We may want to throw a trigger warning out there, though, because Mark Waid has had some negative press of late with regards to appropriate behavior.
Oh, really?
So, I love Mark Waid, but I'm just writing. I don't know the man. but I will say that it's some words. I don't know anything about it personally, but I've heard some things. I read a couple articles. Hopefully, Mark will act more appropriately in the future, if he ever acted inappropriately. And hopefully, he will continue to give us great stories.
Yeah, I mean,
be a better person.
this is all news to me. I, of course, know of, and uh, kind of changes the color on this news item, but was a fan of Mark Waid because he's been such a prolific, amazing comic book writer since for such a long, the 90s, perhaps longer. He used to be a mainstay at DC until again, shortly after Dan Didio got hired, there was a huge fallout between the two of them, and Mark Waid left DC Comics very publicly. He made this known to fans that he was no longer happy there.
Pretty sure Mark Waid wrote the Tower of Babel story, which was adapted into an animated movie.
Okay.
Remember that one where they all couldn't speak English?
No, but I believe you. Sounds like something he'd write. Anyways, now with Dan Didio gone, Mark Waid is once again writing a story for DC Comics. As of right now, the only thing we know is he'll be writing a short story that will premiere in December in Dark Knight's Death Metal, which will be a one-shot spinning out from the whole death metal thing that's currently going on. The comic in specific will be an anthology comic, so it will have several different writers writing several different stories. Mark Waid is only one of them, but this is big news because it will be the first time that Mark Waid has written anything regarding DC since Dan Didio first joined the company, and there's a 2008, I want to say. If I'm wrong, correct me in the box below, but I want to say around 2008. Shortly before New 52.
I was thinking so.
And, but it's big news because he's back, and it's highly likely a writer of this caliber is not back to write a small backup story in a single issue of a comic for a company that he swore off years ago. So this isn't news, this is just conjecture. My conjecture is that I would take this as a sign that he will be writing on something else down the line. We do know, again, regarding the last news story, Bendis is off the Superman titles, and, as the Fizza pointed out, the guy currently responsible for writing the Flash comic, which was also an amazing run, is leaving that title as well. Well, of course, keep you in the loop as things happen. I'm just putting it out there.
Be the first time a writer left working with a company like, remember when JMS left Thor?
Yes. Well, I mean, again, and he had a fallout with the person who was responsible at Marvel at that time. So, I'm not going to say you have to like your boss, but if you two can't get along, then it's probably not going to work.
But just like the DC universe, things change. And,
yes.
JMS came back.
Yes.
Mark Waid has come back.
Yes.
Hopefully both, are their best selves and do some good writing
because they're both amazing writers.
I could use some more Peter David at DC as well.
Yeah. What has he been up to? Let us know in the comments.
I don't know. I think he might be working for IDW or something.
I think you might be right about that. Yeah.
Mark Waid did I think an Archie run, by the way.
So since Mark
That was
Waid's were off
pretty good.
DC, he's been everywhere. He did an Archie run.
His Archie
He
run was pretty good though. I mean,
co-ran an indie comic company for a while. He wrote several stories for Marvel, including a Fantastic Four story that is currently hitting the shops. I mean, the guy's been busy. But you were saying you particularly liked his Archie comic, his Archie run.
it's pretty fun. So I did.
So, you know what's good to have if you have a falling out for either the person or the company that you work for?
Alex.
Sure, definitely that. I was also going to say a good lawyer. Um, our final news story for the evening. Really? Good lawyer? Like a nothing? Maybe because I haven't said what it is. Yeah, could be. We'll see if I get an applause for this after I tell you what the news story is. Final news story of the day is
League of Defense Fund wins settlements.
the long rumored Marvel She-Hulk series. Of course, one in a bunch of Marvel-based shows coming to Disney Plus. Got a director and an EP by the name of Kat Corio. Sorry, Kat, if I mispronounced that. Who has a very extensive both directional as well as executive producer credits. She's done work for Netflix's Dead, to me, Showtime's Shameless, FX is Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Modern Family, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She was just hired for the show. However, most surprising thing is the person who's going to be playing Jennifer Walters is can you say this name, Fizza? Because I know I'm going to butcher it.
Tiana Masala? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't have it in front of me.
A very well. That's a very good memory. I have it in front of me, and I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. But yes,
she is a fantastic actress.
She really is.
If anyone there hasn't seen,
of course, most famously known for it. Yep.
Wow, I have the words fail me because
Yeah.
you just watch it and you'll see an actress act the freaking hell out of the show.
So amazingly talented, and so spot on for this role of Jennifer Walters, right? I mean, when I first read this, I was like, "Yep, I see it. I see the correlation between the two."
I think she's a great actress, so she can do whatever. But